Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Deep Dive. I'm really, really glad you're here with us today because we are embarking on a genuinely paradigm-shifting conversation.
We really are. It's a big one today.
Yeah. We're dissecting the, the hidden mechanics of chronic dissatisfaction. Because we all know that incredibly frustrating feeling, right? Hitting a plateau in your career or maybe getting trapped in this cyclical relationship argument that just, it seems to play out like a broken record year after year.
Like you're completely stuck.
Exactly. But the psychological data and the neurological frameworks we're exploring today, they suggest that the root cause of this feeling of being trapped isn't actually your environment. It's not your boss and it's not your partner.
No, it's not.
It's your own nervous system's inability to process reality, which is a wild concept.
Wild, yeah.
So our mission today is to break down exactly why we end up in these invisible cages and, more importantly, how the secret to unlocking your massive untapped potential lies in doing the exact opposite of what modern society has taught you to do.
Right. Turning around and staring directly into the very emotions you've probably spent your entire life outrunning.
Yes. So to start us off, how do we even begin to visualize this?
Well, it is a profound topic, and I'm thrilled to be here to navigate it with you. To really grasp the magnitude of what we're talking about today, I want you, the listener, to visualize your own mind. Not just as a static physical organ inside your skull.
No, not just biology.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Imagine it as a vast, complex, and highly dynamic network of energetic pathways, an abstract representation of your own psyche. Picture glowing currents of electricity and emotional energy.
Oh, I like that visual.
And some of these currents are flowing freely, like wide open rivers. That's what allows you to feel joy and creativity and genuine connection. But others are completely bottlenecked. They're flashing with the red warning signs of suppressed emotion, trauma, denial.
Just totally jammed up.
Completely jammed. And our goal today isn't to just throw self-help platitudes at you or offer some superficial summary of psychological concepts. We are here to understand the actual mechanics of your brain.
We want to know the why.
Exactly. We want to understand why these internal blockages exist, where they came from, and how they dictate the literal, tangible reality of your daily life.
Okay, let's unpack this from the very beginning. Let's start with the modern trap of constant dissatisfaction. Because this foundational premise hits incredibly close to home for anyone living in the 21st century.
Oh, absolutely. It's universal.
We are currently operating within a societal framework that, honestly, it practically mandates constant, unrelenting struggle.
It demands it.
It really does.
Yeah.
It's an ecosystem that constantly demands we earn more money, achieve higher status, optimize our morning routines, buy better things.
And continuously demand better treatment from everyone around us, too.
Yes. We are told that resting is laziness and that contentment is just another word for giving up. Now, ambition in itself isn't inherently a negative trait, but the psychological literature points out that this relentless, externally motivated push creates a baseline state of chronic dissatisfaction.
It generates this perpetual humming restlessness in the background of everything we do.
What is actually happening to us when we live like that?
What's fascinating here is how this societal conditioning fundamentally alters the architecture of our nervous systems.
Yeah.
When you are continuously bombarded, literally, from the moment you wake up and check your phone to the moment you go to sleep with the subliminal message that what you have is not enough and who you are is currently inadequate, well, life stops being an experience to be lived.
It becomes something else entirely.
It morphs into an endless, exhausting battleground. You wake up psychologically putting on armor.
Wow, putting on armor just to go to work.
Or even just to exist. You view your commute, your workplace, and sometimes tragically even your own home as arenas where you must fight for your share of resources or respect or just peace.
And that constant struggle has a clinical cost, doesn't it?
A massive one. This underlying inescapable dissatisfaction is identified in the clinical data as the absolute root cause of our deepest, most unexplained anxieties.
You mean those moments when you're just sitting on the couch on a Sunday afternoon, everything is technically fine, your bills are paid, your family is safe, but your chest feels incredibly tight?
Yes. You have this overwhelming, suffocating sense of being trapped. That is the physiological manifestation of a psyche that has been systematically trained to never, ever be at peace with the present moment.
Because your nervous system is scanning for a tiger that isn't even there.
Precisely. Simply because society told you that if you aren't running, you're failing.
That feeling of being unable to just sit and be without a video playing or a TV show on or a phone in your hand, It's so common. It's almost a universal symptom of modern life.
It's epidemic.
But as we look deeper into the material, there is a really fascinating observation about the illusion of self-awareness that traps so many people in this state. You probably know someone exactly like this. Or, let's be brutally honest, you might have been this person at some point in your life.
We all have.
When confronted with the potential psychological blind spot, they aggressively, almost violently deny it. They say things like, no, I'm not like that at all. I don't have that problem. I hate drama. I am totally rational.
Right, I'm the logical one.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
the psychological paradox here is brilliant. The people who most aggressively deny having any emotional blind spots or internal biases are almost universally the individuals with the lowest actual self-awareness.
It is a classic manifestation of the Dunning-Kruger effect applied to emotional intelligence, mixed with profound ego defense mechanisms.
How does the ego play into that denial?
Well, the ego's primary evolutionary job is to protect your current identity. It
Yeah.
wants to keep you psychologically intact. So if acknowledging a flaw or a toxic trait or a deeply unhealed childhood wound threatens the structural integrity of that identity, the ego doesn't just politely disagree.
It fights back.
It throws up a massive, impenetrable wall of aggressive denial. But that defensive mechanism, while protective in the short term, acts as a complete and total barrier to personal growth.
Because you can't fix what you won't even look at.
Exactly. You cannot heal a wound you refuse to look at. You cannot navigate out of a maze if you are violently screaming at anyone who suggests you might be lost. The aggressive denial is actually a symptom of deep unconscious terror.
Terror, really.
Yes. The more forcefully someone insists they have absolutely no internal work to do, the more terrified their subconscious is of what they might find if they actually stopped running and looked inward. They are projecting their internal chaos outward because the internal landscape is too painful to observe.
Which perfectly transitions us into one of the most confronting, difficult to swallow concepts we are covering today, the mirror of relationships.
No, this is a tough one for a lot of people to hear.
It really is. The data provides a highly specific, very relatable example to illustrate how this projection works in real time. Imagine a parent dealing with a highly difficult, perhaps even aggressive or fiercely rebellious 14-year-old child.
A very common scenario.
Right. The parent is exhausted. They're at their wits' end. The teenager is slamming doors, rolling their eyes, talking back, causing the parent real emotional and perhaps even physical distress.
It's a highly stressful environment.
And the natural, totally understandable reaction from the parent is, how on earth can I just accept a child who is acting like a monster and causing me so much pain? They view the child as the sole, isolated source of the problem.
Which makes logical sense on the surface.
But the psychological framework flips this entirely on its head, doesn't it?
It does, and it introduces the profoundly challenging concept of psychological mirroring. What's fascinating here is that children, especially teenagers who are pushing boundaries, act as incredibly clear, unblemished mirrors to their parents.
Okay, what does that actually mean, though?
It means the child's behavioral issues, their explosive anger, their blatant defiance, their refusal to adhere to rules, these things often reflect the parent's own unresolved internal conflicts.
I really want to challenge that because I can hear the listeners throwing their hands up in frustration right now.
Go for it.
If a 14-year-old is screaming at you because you took away their smartphone, how is that your internal conflict? Aren't teenagers just a cocktail of raging hormones and underdeveloped prefrontal cortices?
Yeah.
Why does the parent have to take on the psychological burden of a teenager's bad behavior?
That is exactly the resistance most people feel when they first encounter this concept. And it's a completely valid question. Yes, teenagers are hormonal, and yes, they lack impulse control. But the mirroring happens in the reaction.
The parent's reaction.
Precisely. Why does the teenager's anger trigger such a profound, destabilizing meltdown in the parent? Often, a parent who cannot handle a child's anger is a parent who, as a child themselves, was never allowed to express anger.
Yeah.
Their inner 14-year-old was silenced, heavily punished, or shamed for having big emotions. So when their own child freely expresses rage, the parent's subconscious is deeply triggered. It feels incredibly unfair. The parent's nervous system panics because it associates anger with danger.
So the child is holding up a mirror to the parent's own suppressed emotion.
Exactly. Furthermore, if a child is constantly walking all over a parent, the mirror is reflecting the parent's own inability to set and hold firm, calm boundaries. The child's chaos is literally feeding on the parent's lack of internal solidity.
Okay, I have to clarify something so we don't fall into the trap of victim blaming here. The material does state that the child absolutely needs proper psychological, pedagogical, or disciplinary support. Right.
Yes, absolutely. You do not simply ignore a teenager's destructive needs or behaviors.
But the paradigm shift is that the parent must simultaneously look inward with ruthless honesty. They have to ask, what am I unconsciously inviting into my own energetic space?
Right. What suppressed frustration or lack of internal boundaries within myself is this child acting out on my behalf?
That is incredibly deep. It's not that the parent is causing the child to be a teenager, but the parent's intense, suffering reaction is a spotlight pointing directly at their own unhealed wounds.
That's a perfect way to summarize it.
I want to connect this directly to you, the listener, right now. Think about your life at this exact moment. Who is currently frustrating you the most?
Just picture their face.
Is it a micromanaging boss who never trusts your work? Is it a passive-aggressive partner who constantly makes you guess what they are feeling? Or maybe a friend who relentlessly crosses your boundaries and just drains your energy?
We all have someone who fits that description.
Take a second to really ask yourself, what unresolved internal issue might that person be reflecting back at you?
If you are constantly dealing with people who disrespect your time, where are you deeply disrespecting your own time?
Right. If you are constantly attracting partners who won't commit, where is the part of you that is actually terrified of deep commitment?
This raises an important question, and it is the crux of the entire psychological framework we're discussing today.
What's that?
If we are supposed to stop fighting the mirror, stop trying to change the other person, and start looking exclusively at ourselves, does that mean we just let people walk all over us? Does it mean we become passive observers to our own abuse or mistreatment?
Oh, I am so glad you brought this up. This is where we need to completely, radically redefine the concept of acceptance versus resistance. Because the psychological definition of acceptance is vastly different from the societal one.
Vastly different.
Let's clear up this massive misconception right now, because the word acceptance has terrible PR. When we hear the word acceptance, so many of us physically cringe. We immediately equate it with weakness.
We think acceptance means giving up.
Right, surrendering to a miserable fate, throwing in the towel, becoming a doormat. We think it means looking at a toxic workplace or a failing marriage and saying, well, my life is terrible, this person treats me awfully, and I just have to live with it because I am accepting it.
But at what point does that version of acceptance bleed into just giving up?
Exactly. If I am in a truly toxic environment, isn't accepting my reality just making me fably complacent?
That is fatalism. And perhaps apathy, but it is absolutely not acceptance. The true clinical definition of acceptance is incredibly precise. And rather than being passive, it is arguably the most fiercely empowering action you can take.
How so? Define it for us.
Acceptance is the active process of looking at a situation or a person completely without judgment or the desire to mentally manipulate the facts.
Mentally manipulate the facts, like telling yourself it's not that bad.
Right, or telling yourself they will magically change tomorrow. Acceptance is acknowledging reality exactly as it is without denying it, without suppressing your feelings about it, and critically without engaging in an endless, draining, unwinnable cognitive war against the facts.
Let's use the toxic workplace example from earlier. What does resistance look like there?
Resistance is waking up every day and thinking, my boss shouldn't be like this. This company shouldn't operate this way. It's so unfair. I'm going to force them to recognize my value.
You are fighting reality.
You are fighting a ghost. Acceptance, on the other hand, is the clarity of saying, this building is on fire. My boss is a narcissist. This company does not value me. That is the concrete reality of my present moment.
And only from that place of cold, clear acceptance can you ask the ultimate empowering question.
Exactly. You ask, now how do I walk my path despite this? How do I navigate this reality? Acceptance isn't staying in the burning building. Acceptance is acknowledging the fire so you can find the exit.
I absolutely love that distinction. How do I walk my path despite this? It's an active navigation of reality, not a passive submission to it.
Precisely.
But let's look at the alternative. What happens when we refuse to accept reality? What happens to our minds and bodies when we lock ourselves into perpetual resistance? When we get stuck in that loop of, I will fix this person, or I will force this situation to change, even if it completely breaks my spirit.
When you refuse to accept reality, you create massive cognitive and neurological blocks within yourself. Drawing on principles of physics, and famous physicists have proven that absolutely everything is energy. We know that suppressed emotions don't just disappear.
They don't just vanish into thin air.
No. When you resist reality, You are generating constant, high-level stress hormones, cortisol, adrenaline. You are generating suppressed anger, frustrated ambition, deep, toxic resentment.
And that energy has to go somewhere.
It becomes trapped in your somatic nervous system. You walk around with perpetually tight shoulders, a clenched jaw, a shallow breathing pattern. You are emitting a low frequency that attracts similarly low energy events and people.
Beyond the physical toll, there's a profound psychological toll, right? Related to cognitive bandwidth.
Yes, specifically regarding your reticular activating system, or RAS. Your RAS is a part of your brain that filters information. When you are entirely consumed by resistance and resentment, your RAS is programmed to only look for threats, unfairness, and negativity.
You get absolute tunnel vision.
You become a magnet for frustration because your brain is only prioritizing data that confirms your frustration.
And the ripple effect of this tunnel vision is staggering. The psychological insights warn that if you lock yourself into this chronic state of resistance, you will inevitably begin to experience a profound sense of scarcity.
And we aren't just talking about money here.
No, not just financial poverty, though. Being cognitively exhausted certainly doesn't help your career trajectory. We are talking about a scarcity of the things that actually make human life beautiful and sustainable. You will experience a scarcity of love, a scarcity of genuine respect, a scarcity of deep, meaningful conversation, and a complete drought of new opportunities in your life.
The scarcity mindset becomes a biologically self-fulfilling prophecy. Because you are exhausting 100% of your mental, emotional, and physical resources fighting a futile war against reality, you literally have zero cognitive bandwidth left to recognize or receive opportunities, or love, or connection.
Going back to the door analogy, you are so fiercely focused on screaming at the locked, closed door, demanding that it open, that you are completely blind to the open window right next to you.
That's exactly it. A scarcity of love often manifests in people pushing away genuine compliments or sabotaging perfectly good, healthy relationships because the lack of chaotic nervous system activating drama feels boring to a brain that is addicted to the struggle of resistance.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. If resistance is so painful, and if it leads to such a miserable, scarce existence, why do we do it?
Why do we fight reality so hard?
Exactly. This brings us to the profound danger of suppressed emotions and what the literature calls the logical trap. When we are faced with heavy, uncomfortable emotional pressure, grief, rejection, deep inadequacy, our human reflex is almost always to hide.
We suppress it. We run from it.
Using highly accessible modern distractions. Doom scrolling for 4 hours, overworking ourselves to the point of burnout, binge-watching television.
But the sneakiest, most insidious avoidance tactic is the logical trap.
Yes. We try to intellectualize our way out of feeling our feelings. We tell ourselves highly rational stories. Well, what can I do? That's just my child or my spouse or my mother. I just have to deal with it.
Or we say, my partner yelled at me, but they had a really stressful day at the office, their boss is terrible, and I didn't do the dishes, so logically it makes sense that they snapped. It's fine, I shouldn't be mad, I just have to be the bigger person.
We use airtight logic to completely bypass the raw, physical feeling of the emotion.
And that logical trap is a brilliant, highly sophisticated defense mechanism. It's often employed by highly intelligent people, but it is incredibly destructive to the nervous system.
What's the neurological toll of that?
The data is very clear here. Rationalizing away your pain or intellectualizing your trauma does not process the emotion, it merely catalogs it. Every single suppressed emotion, every swallowed tear, every stifled scream of anger takes up physical and energetic space in the architecture of your brain and your somatic nervous system.
Because you are avoiding the feeling, the brain cannot process it.
Exactly. When you avoid the raw, chaotic feeling of the emotion by immediately burying it under a neat layer of logical rationalization, your brain's emotional processing centers, specifically the amygdala and the hippocampus, cannot metabolize the event. The emotion just sits there, trapped in your body, taking up valuable processing bandwidth.
And the real-world impact of this trapped emotion is exactly what creates that agonizing feeling of being totally, permanently stuck in life.
It creates a massive psychological bottleneck.
Have you ever looked around your peer group and felt like everyone else seems to be effortlessly moving forward? Their careers are advancing, they are getting married, they seem to be finding genuine joy.
While you remain stuck in the exact same spot.
Having the exact same complaints year after year, wondering why you can't progress despite working so incredibly hard. The hard truth from the sources is that the root cause isn't a lack of effort. It's not a lack of intelligence or bad luck. It is these invisible emotional hooks dragging you down.
You are trying to sprint a marathon while wearing a heavy backpack full of rocks that you refuse to even acknowledge you are carrying, simply because you've logically convinced yourself the backpack isn't there.
Let's shift the timeline back for a second.
hmm
If we connect this to the bigger picture of human development, we have to ask the critical question: where did these hooks come from?
Why are we carrying these rocks in the first place?
Right. To understand this, the material points us to the developmental timeline of the human brain. And the neurological consensus is absolutely staggering here. 90% of our current adult emotional blockages, irrational triggers, and self-sabotaging behaviors stem from a very specific, highly vulnerable window of time.
The ages of 0 to 7 years old?
90%. That means almost every time you wildly overreact to a slightly ambiguous email from your boss, or pick an irrational fight with your partner over how the dishwasher's loaded, or deliberately self-sabotage a massive career opportunity because you suddenly feel like an imposter.
You are not acting as a rational adult.
No, you are actually operating on an outdated software program that was written into your brain before you even knew how to tie your own shoes.
It is staggering, but when we look at the science of the primitive brain, it explains exactly why this specific age range is so critical. During those first 7 years of life, a child's brain is operating primarily in theta brainwaves.
Which is essentially a state of deep hypnosis, right?
Exactly. More importantly, the prefrontal lobe, the area of the brain responsible for advanced logic, context, reasoning, and critical thinking, is completely underdeveloped. It's simply not online yet.
So they have no filter.
No filter whatsoever. Because that logical filter does not exist yet, everything the young child experiences completely bypasses any sort of rational assessment. Every interaction with a caregiver, every harsh tone of voice, every perceived rejection or moment of conditional love is written directly into the primitive automatic brain as absolute, unquestionable truth.
The primitive brain doesn't understand nuance.
It doesn't understand the stress of the adult world. It only understands binary states. Survival versus threat, and safety versus danger.
To make this abstract neuroscience incredibly concrete, there is a brilliant, hyper-specific example from the text that perfectly illustrates how this programming happens: the spilled tea trauma.
Ah, yes. This is a powerful visualization.
Imagine a young child, maybe 4 years old, reaching for something on a crowded dining table and accidentally knocking over a delicate teacup. The tea spills everywhere, maybe even breaking the cup. Now, there are two drastically different ways this scenario plays out.
Let's look at the healthy way first.
If the adults in the room are emotionally regulated and treat it as a normal, mundane accident, they sigh, they wipe it up, they reassure the startled child, and they don't emotionally destroy them over it, the child's developing brain learns a fundamental lifelong lesson.
They learn, I am safe, I am accepted even when I make a mistake. My flaws and accidents do not make me unlovable.
Exactly. But consider the tragic, all-too-common alternative. If that same spilled teacup results in the adults erupting in disproportionate anger, punishing the child severely, screaming, rolling their eyes, or making the child feel stupid, clumsy, and unworthy.
That simple, meaningless act of dropping a cup becomes a deeply rooted neurological trauma.
Because the 4-year-old child has no logical prefrontal cortex to analyze the situation and say, oh, my father's just stressed about the mortgage today. His anger has nothing to do with my inherent worth.
The primitive brain records a very different message. It records, my mistakes make me unworthy of love. I am fundamentally flawed. If I'm not perfect, I will be rejected and abandoned.
And that catastrophic belief bypasses logic and becomes a hardwired subconscious program.
This leads us directly to the concept of shadow selves.
Tell me more about that.
We all have these fragments of our childhood selves walking around inside our adult bodies, the parts of us that felt unseen, the parts that felt unloved, the parts that learned they had to be flawless perfectionists or invisible wallflowers to survive their family dynamic.
The parts that were yelled at over spilled tea.
Right. And if these shadow parts, these inner children, are not deliberately found, deeply acknowledged, and consciously integrated into our adult hearts, the psychological reality is grim.
What happens?
We will endlessly repeat cycles of self-sabotage in our adult lives. We will continue to unconsciously blow up our adult relationships, sabotage our careers, and ruin our peace, all because a terrified 5-year-old inside our subconscious is desperately trying to protect us from getting yelled at again.
The sources note that discovering these root causes can actually happen remarkably fast. Sometimes it takes as little as 15 minutes in a proper psychological evaluation for a trained observer to spot the exact origin of a patient's people-pleasing or anger issues. The patterns are usually glaringly obvious from the outside.
But knowing the root cause isn't the cure, is it? Insight alone doesn't change anything.
That is such a critical point. You can spend 10 years sitting on a couch explaining exactly why your mother made you a perfectionist. But if you do not actively change your neurological response to stress, your life will not change.
The real responsibility lies in actively applying a protocol to untie those childhood knots.
Okay, so how do we actually do that? This is where we pivot to the absolute most actionable, practical, and arguably most difficult part of today's deep dive. The answer to fixing this is a highly specific neurological technique called the Making Space Protocol.
It is about processing suppressed emotions in real time, right in the messy middle of your life.
Detail the exact mechanics of this protocol for us, because precision matters deeply here.
Absolutely. When a terrible, overwhelming feeling suddenly hits you, whether it's an intense flash of sudden rage at a coworker who undermined you, or the deep, hollow ache of abandonment when someone you like doesn't text you back, or just a profound sorrow, your biological, ingrained instinct will be to run.
Your brain will scream at you to escape the discomfort.
Right. The protocol demands the exact opposite. Do not run. Do not distract yourself. Do not pick up your phone to scroll. Do not go pour a drink. Do not call a friend to complain and vent.
So what do?
You stop whatever you are doing, and you sit with the raw, uncomfortable physical sensation of the emotion in your body. Notice it. Where does it live? Is it a tightness in your throat? A burning in your chest?
And then what?
Then you explicitly say to yourself out loud if you are alone, or clearly in your mind, a very specific validating phrase. You say, I feel very angry right now and I can make space for this. Or I feel deeply rejected right now and I can make space for this.
I can make space for this. It sounds deceptively simple, but I know from experience it is incredibly difficult in the moment. Let's list the things we usually do when we get triggered. The impulsive reactions that we use to avoid making space.
There are so many.
We swear. We want to literally throw a coffee cup at someone's head. We storm out of the room, slamming the door behind us. Or conversely, we shrink away entirely, retreating into a victim mentality, or giving our partner the silent treatment for 3 days.
The absolute non-negotiable golden rule of this protocol is this. You must feel the emotion completely, but you must not execute the impulsive action it demands.
You feel the intense, burning urge to throw the cup, but you physically keep your hands folded in your lap.
Yes. You feel the overwhelming urge to scream insults, but you keep your mouth firmly closed. You become a container for the emotion.
If we connect this to the bigger picture of neuroscience, we can understand exactly why this works so powerfully to rewire your brain.
Right. Let's look at the amygdala. The Making Space protocol is essentially a deliberate biohack for your brain's primitive fear center. By acknowledging the intense emotion without acting on it and maintaining steady, consciously regulated breathing, you are signaling safety to the amygdala.
The source material suggests a specific breathing visualization, doesn't it?
Yes, the physiological suggestion here is to visualize smelling a bouquet of flowers on a slow inhale through the nose and gently blowing out a row of candles on the exhale through the mouth. You are telling your primitive brain, yes, we are experiencing a high-stress emotion, but look at our body. We are sitting still. We are breathing deeply. We are safe to feel this.
And the brain finally begins to process the emotion you've avoided for perhaps 20 or 40 years. There is a beautiful, highly visual analogy used in the text to describe this process, the ice cube analogy.
It's a perfect metaphor.
When you finally allow your brain to process a trapped emotion, it begins to slowly melt. It is exactly like taking a frozen solid ice cube out of the deep freeze and simply setting it on the kitchen counter at room temperature.
You don't have to attack the ice cube with a hammer?
No. You don't have to put it in the microwave or try to aggressively logic it into water. You just expose it to the gentle warmth of your conscious, non-judgmental attention, and the laws of nature take over. It naturally, inevitably melts.
But we must offer a profound warning here based on the text. Writing this out is not necessarily a gentle, peaceful, or spa-like experience.
No, definitely not.
Emotions are essentially electric currents traveling through your central nervous system. If you have suppressed a deep oceanic well of anger or grief for decades, finally sitting down and making space for it might feel like a high-voltage shock to your system.
It might feel like a literal volcanic eruption inside your chest for a few days.
Exactly. People often fail at meditation because they cannot tolerate the sheer intensity of their own internal feelings. The unprocessed somatic energy can be terrifying.
But the psychological promise here is that if you can hold steady, if you can weather that initial volcanic eruption without acting out and without running away, The voltage eventually drops. The electric current dissipates, the ice cube melts, and that is when true healing begins. You've cleared the bottleneck.
So what does this all mean for your day-to-day life? Once you've started clearing these blockages, how do we ensure we don't just build new ones? How do we break the loop permanently?
This brings us to the necessity of auditing your routines. I want to challenge you, the listener, right now. Look back at your last year. Look at your last 2 or 3 years. What invisible loops are you stuck in?
Right. Are you waking up, driving the same route, doing the same job, coming home to the same frustrations?
If your life right now looks like a carbon copy from 3 years ago, you are caught in a deep neurological loop.
Running on autopilot absolutely guarantees that your future will look exactly like your past. Acceptance is the key that opens the door to rebuilding the future, but it requires breaking the routine.
And breaking the routine requires changing your internal monologue. The data draws a very sharp contrast between two drastically different mindsets, the victim and the creator.
It all boils down to how you speak to yourself.
The victim mindset operates on a frequency of endless loops of self-pity. The victim says, "Oh, my troubled head, why am I so unlucky? Why does this exact same terrible thing always happen to me?"
Operating on that frequency literally keeps you trapped.
But the creator mindset utilizes what we call empowering questions. Instead of asking, "Why me?" the creator mindset acknowledges the difficulty, accepts the reality, and then asks, "What can I do?"
How can I overcome this? Or how can I update the boundaries in this relationship?
Asking these specific, action-oriented questions activates the part of your psyche that inherently knows the answers, the prefrontal cortex. It shifts you from passive suffering to active navigation.
It reminds us of a core truth found in the literature. The life we live isn't trying to torture us. It is simply providing experiences for our consciousness to mature and elevate. The resistance builds the muscle.
Yes, but doing this level of heavy emotional lifting can be incredibly taxing on your physical body, which is why the final aspect of our discussion today is so crucial. We need to talk about the vital role of nature and grounding your body.
You are not a machine. You are a biological organism.
I found this part of the research so incredibly refreshing because it pulls us out of our heads and gives us practical, physical advice for when the emotional work feels entirely too heavy.
The specific recommendations here are simple but neurologically powerful. Deliberately walking in nature, stepping barefoot on natural soil, touching water, or simply taking a mindful shower, hugging a tree.
It's a form of physical meditation.
It resets your vagus nerve. There is also a strong emphasis on hydrating aggressively, drinking plenty of water, and eating light, clean foods to lessen the burden on the physical body. Your body needs energy to process emotional voltage.
It's about giving your biology a break. But as we near the end of this journey, this raises an important question, perhaps the most important conceptual leap of the entire deep dive. What is the fundamental difference between acceptance and surrender?
They are often used interchangeably, but they represent entirely different states. The sources view acceptance as the necessary, difficult checkpoint before true surrender. Acceptance is seeing reality clearly. It's the work.
And surrender.
True surrender is the ultimate state where you are entirely at peace, completely aligned with your true self, and the struggle ceases entirely. You aren't just navigating reality, you are flowing effortlessly with it.
I've heard it described like this. Acceptance is dropping your sword in the middle of a brutal battle and refusing to fight anymore. Surrender is the profound realization that the war is entirely over, the enemy was an illusion, and you can finally go home.
That is beautiful, and it is the ultimate goal of all the work we've discussed today.
Wow. Okay, let's do a quick summary of the key takeaways to make sure these concepts are fully locked in before we go. First, we learned that chronic dissatisfaction stems directly from our relentless resistance to reality.
Right. And true acceptance is absolutely not weakness. It is the ultimate tool for clearing energetic blockages.
We discovered that our most destructive adult behaviors almost always trace back to subconscious programming from the ages of 0 to 7. And the only way to heal them is to actively use the making space protocol. We had to sit directly inside the fire of our uncomfortable emotions without acting out so our amygdala can finally process them.
And if there is one single direct application I want you, the listener, to take away from this, it is a reminder that all the keys to your locked doors are already inside you. Whenever you feel a negative emotion today, your only job is to pause, breathe, and make space for it without acting out.
I love that. And to leave you with a final provocative thought to ponder as you go about your day. If every deeply frustrating person in your life, is actually just a mirror reflecting a hidden part of your own subconscious. What would happen if you finally stopped trying to clean the mirror and started addressing the face looking into it?
An incredibly powerful question to end on.
It really is. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the mind. We wish you immense clarity and profound courage on your personal journey of growth. Until next time.